Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. My name is Mark, and I would like to invite you on a journey that began when our son Robert spread his wings and flew into adulthood. Passionate about studying other countries, he got a place at the National University, and soon he was going to embark on an exciting adventure that would delay him for many years. We were already looking forward to Christmas Eve to see him. With Robert's departure, our house has become a little different. The bedroom and bathroom he occupied were now vacant, and I turned to my wife Susan with a playful grin. "You prefer a bath rather than a shower, don't you?" I asked, knowing the answer perfectly well. "When I'm not in a hurry, yes," she replied, her curiosity aroused. "Why are you asking?" "Why not make it more interesting? How about we share a bath?" I suggested. She hesitated, her cheeks flushed at the hint of intrigue. "No, yes. Maybe later." A spark of mischief lit up in my head. "How about we move all the laundry to the bathroom?" I suggested, feeling a growing excitement. "There's a shower over the bathtub if needed, and our bathroom doesn't have a bathtub. Think about it. No more arguing about where to sit, and you won't have to think about my relentless neatness." She laughed, and I saw the gears turn. As the week went on, I noticed that her wardrobe was changing, more bright work clothes and daring underwear. Fridays became a showcase, and I found myself attracted to her playful confidence. At first, I felt a little out of place, but one Friday when I came home early and hurried to the bathroom, I surprised myself. The seat was lowered, which caused an unexpected pause. At that moment, I realized that our house was being transformed, as was our relationship. It was a new chapter filled with spontaneity and the thrill of shared experiences. Who would have thought that Robert's departure would lead to such delightful adventures for Susan and me? I am a self-proclaimed tidy person, but when it comes to the toilet seat, my bathroom has its own rules. The seat must be raised. This is my declaration of male territory. "Did you use the toilet this morning by any chance?" I asked Susan, half jokingly, but with a note of suspicion. "Good God, no. I never dreamed of it. You're too neat for that," she replied, her eyes widening in mock horror. And to be honest, I believed her. But there was a man in the frame, most likely a husband who had his own fights for a place at home. He came into my room, used my toilet, and automatically closed the seat. I could imagine him in bed with her, and after that she went to her clean bathroom to freshen up, blissfully unaware that he had just left evidence of his visit in my domain. Did this happen every Friday? I couldn't get rid of that thought, but what worried me most was how I managed to stay calm. Rage boiled inside me. Next Friday, I decided to take a day off from work and think over my little operation. I rented my fancy car at the rental office and took another one for the day. I got home just in time to see her leave the house, and a plan began to take shape. I followed her unnoticed until she parked her car in the nearest parking lot, and then followed her example, positioning myself so that I could keep an eye on her car while I slipped into the cafe to drink coffee, and thoughts of possible options flashed through my head. In a noisy coffee shop across the street, I was lost in thought, considering my next move. Anticipating the unexpected, I decided to equip myself. I quickly ran into the nearest men's clothing store and bought an elegant, lightweight anorak and a stylish baseball cap. 2 shops later, I bought a needlework knife and a retractable blade, armed in case something happened. With a sense of satisfaction, I returned to the parking lot and took my former place, like an experienced professional. Returning to the coffee shop, I took another cup of steaming tea and headed to my rented car, carefully monitoring the surroundings. At exactly 11 a.m., a man got out of an elegant car parked next to Susan's car, which aroused my curiosity. Just 2 minutes later, Susan got out of the car, slipped into her car, and opened the passenger door, inviting him in with casual grace. They headed to a popular pub, famous for its irresistible lunch dishes. I followed them unnoticed, changing into my disguise as they settled down at a cozy table at the back entrance, where there was plenty of room for them. The pub was only half full, which provided perfect cover as I settled down at the bar, keeping my eyes on their table. Gathering my courage, I went to the waiter and ordered. He hesitated, but I showed him the 20 pounds, and his reluctance disappeared. "Come on, it'll only take a second," I urged, my heart pounding with anticipation. The scene unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. I went to the bathroom, discreetly poured out beer and coffee, and then went back into the dining room. Their table was right between me and the exit, a perfect vantage point. The waiter, who now understood my plan, approached them, pretending to be clumsy when he dropped his spoon at Susan's feet. When she stretched out her legs in surprise, both she and the man paid attention to him. Taking advantage of the moment, I slipped behind her chair and grabbed her purse, which was hanging on the back. She disappeared under my anorak as I left the house, adrenaline pumping through my veins. On the street, I quickly rummaged through her things, found the keys and climbed into her car, leaving the rented car behind. The exciting chase has just begun. It seems that the plan unfolded in parts, each of which was more mysterious than the previous one. Almost instinctively, I drove to the airport and parked the car in a long-term parking lot, like a moth attracted by a flickering light. After getting out of the car, I absent-mindedly wiped the steering wheel and gearshift lever, finding several spots of my own fingerprints, traces of my presence in a place that seemed strangely familiar and at the same time alien. As I was riding in a taxi back to the pub, my phone buzzed from an incoming call from an unknown number. "Hello, is this Mr. Mark Miller?" the voice on the other end asked. "Who is this?" I replied, feeling curious. "This is a pub. There is a lady here who seems to have dialed the wrong number." I felt annoyed and abruptly hung up the phone. However, the calls continued to arrive, each of them more insistent than the previous one. I canceled them one by one, amused by the confusion on the other end. Were they puzzled by my silence, or did they really make a mistake with the number? When I returned to the pub, I looked around the room, but found no trace of the lady or the caller. My thoughts returned to the rental car, and for the first time I decided to rummage through Susan's bag. Inside, I found a tiny pair of panties, completely fresh, and hinting that the day had not yet come to an end. It dawned on me that if she didn't have time to buy more, she might spend the rest of the day without comfortable underwear. When I opened her purse, I noticed that it contained keys, cash, cards, a mobile phone, and a handful of contraceptives items that seemed inappropriate given the nature of our relationship. After skimming through the messages, I discovered that she had a lunch date with Edward, a name that I began to associate with something more than just a casual acquaintance. The mention of his sleek car ignited a spark of awareness, setting off a chain of events that I could hardly have predicted. When I returned the rented car to the rental office, the engine hummed softly while I parked it. With a satisfied click, I locked the doors and slid into my car, the familiar skin lying pleasantly under my fingers. Where am I going? Susan's place of work. There was a ghost town in the parking lot, no cameras, no prying eyes. After parking, I took out a knife, the blade of which sparkled under the rays of the midday sun. I quickly dealt with the valves of her lover's car. While I was working, the blade danced, leaving deep scratches on the smooth bodywork, a trace of my work. "Stop it, Susan," I muttered to myself, pleased with how chaotic everything turned out. I had to close both doors tightly to keep my little secret. Maybe this is the work of an envious colleague who is bitterly worried about his inability to write. With that thought in mind, I went home, feeling calm. 20 minutes after our dinner, when the spoon had already crashed to the floor, Susan finally noticed her bag was missing. At first, it seemed that there was no connection between these two events. She and Edward casually mentioned this to the waiter, who immediately began a futile search in the dining room. The bartender shrugged, claiming that nothing unusual had happened. "Maybe you left her in the car," Edward suggested with a hint of hope in his voice. "No way. I distinctly remember putting it on the back of a chair, but let's check it out anyway." Panic began to creep into my soul. "Damn it!" she exclaimed, her heart pounding wildly. "After all, the car has disappeared too!" Panic was building as she rushed back to the pub, panting with excitement, urging them to call the police. Can they contact her husband? They tried, but every time they dialed the number, they seemed to come to a dead end. When the police finally arrived, she laid out the whole confusing story, trying to piece it together. Ignoring the chaos around her, she realized that the keys were in her bag. It looked like the thief had his eye on her car, and panic was creeping up on her. Time was running out, her house was vulnerable, and every second counted. In the confusion, Susan couldn't remember if there was anything in her purse that could lead a thief right to her doorstep. Tension hung between her and Edward, and they found themselves at an impasse, wanting to go their separate ways. However, the police insisted that they check her house first, promising to escort them to the station after that to give evidence. The officer will stand guard while they deal with the consequences. At the station, they tried to call me at work, but found out that I had a personal day off. The anxiety grew as they dialed the phone number, but Susan became more and more convinced that she had mixed up the numbers. After what seemed like an eternity, they were finally given the go-ahead to leave. There was no cash in Susan's purse, and the officers were suddenly inundated with calls, which caused them to stand in place for at least an hour. At the moment the situation was clarified, Edward called a taxi, and they went back to the office. During the trip, they came up with an alibi for themselves, repeating the story that two colleagues were just enjoying lunch, which turned into chaos. When they reached Edward's luxury car, an unexpected turn awaited them. To get Susan home, he would have to fork out for another taxi. The door swung open and she stormed in, venting her frustration. "Did you come by taxi? What the hell are you doing here?" she shouted, and her voice echoed in the silence. She collapsed onto the couch, the weight of the day pressing down on her until she couldn't hold back anymore and her emotions burst out. Once again, I found myself in a waiting state, and then, out of the blue, she appeared Susan, haggardly getting out of a taxi. "Problems with the car?" I asked, burning with curiosity. She seemed a little deflated by my question. "Actually, my car was stolen, and my bag too." "How could this happen?" I was dying to find out, but she waved me off. "I'll explain everything, but first I need to take a shower. I spent the whole day in a dirty police station." I wasn't going to let her escape that easily. "Shower later. Give me all the details now. Sit down." I've rarely been this assertive, but I felt she needed to back off, and I wasn't going to let her slip away just yet. With a careful sigh, she sat down in her seat and told me everything that had happened. I listened attentively, sincerely sympathizing, but soon I wanted to dig deeper. "Where did you eat? Who were you with?" Her eyes narrowed at the change in my tone. I could tell that she sensed my wariness, but at the same time she held herself confidently, not wanting to show any signs of a defensive position. By the time she finished, anxiety hung in the air like a thick fog. I decided to change the subject. "I should call a locksmith, just in case." She looked puzzled. "Why?" "Because someone has the keys to our house. If there's anything incriminating in your bag, they might break in tonight while we're sleeping." At the word incriminating, she flinched, and I saw her shoulders tighten. I dialed the number of the locksmith, who agreed to come right now. Susan tried to run upstairs, but I couldn't. "You need to drink something while we wait. Let's calm our nerves." There was disappointment and gratitude in her eyes, but I could tell she appreciated the distraction. The night was just beginning, and I felt that we were on the verge of exposure. While she was enjoying the wine, I positioned myself behind her, gently kneading her shoulders and neck. A grin spread across my face as I felt her tension begin to fade, but she suddenly tensed up again, nervously tugging at her skirt. At that moment, a locksmith appeared, breaking the moment. "Okay, let him in," I ordered, watching her expression change. "You can just stand there while he changes the locks on the front and back doors." "Why should I do this?" she defended herself. "You're the one who lost the keys after lunch with that guy." Her silence spoke volumes. Her anxiety was still palpable. When everything was ready, I went to pay the bill, calling Susan with me. The locksmith handed us 2 blister packs, each of which had locks made using only 2 keys. He handed one of the packages to me. "I would like you to be the one to open it and check both keys. After a day like yours, I'm sure you'll appreciate the extra security." I carefully opened the package, first checking the keys to the front door, and then repeating the procedure for the back. After paying him, I put all 4 keys in my pocket. However, Susan still hadn't gone upstairs. "Okay," I said, breaking the silence. "Let's put an end to this terrible day." She shifted uncomfortably, clearly still tense. "By the way," I added casually, holding out my hand to show the contraceptives, "you dropped this. I'm sure it's yours. Do you want to enlighten me how long you've been using them and who was lucky enough to be in your company?" "It's not mine," she replied sharply, her denial hanging in the air, as did the tension between us. "But you're not listening to me. I know it's yours, and I'm giving you one last chance to be honest. To make it easier, let me spell it out for you. I've seen Edward's name in your contacts. Now tell me, how long has this been going on?" "What?" "I promise I'm not connected to anyone. It's not mine. Lift up your skirt." "No way!" I pushed her into a chair and she sat down on it, staggered, trying to keep her balance. As soon as she sat down, I pulled her skirt up to her waist, exposing her bare skin against the cool skin. "Where are your panties?" I squeezed my knees between her knees, not giving her a chance to close them. She instinctively covered herself with her hands. "Why are you doing this?" Her palms remained in place, creating a useless barrier. "I had a little incident at work," she finally admitted. Well, got into an unpleasant situation, and I threw them in the toilet." "And what did you do with them?" "I threw them in the trash. It's always frustrating when you don't plan everything properly. As a result, you end up in a web of hasty questions. It's too late to regret now." "Why didn't you buy spare parts? Have you been hanging around all day?" "Shortly before lunch, I found myself in a whirlwind of chaos. I intended to pick up the necessary things on my way to work, but fate had other plans. My car was stolen, and everything suddenly got out of control. And then Edward showed up. You left with him without panties. Seriously, why didn't you just stop by the store on your way to the pub?" The very thought of it was terrible. "He's the one in charge of the project I'm temporarily involved in. And what do you think is more uncomfortable than trying to enjoy lunch while the wind playfully teases you?" She stopped talking, and I grabbed her wrist, pulled her to her feet and led her upstairs. Her eyes widened in disbelief when she noticed the 2 packed suitcases. "Here's everything you'll need in the next few days while I start the divorce process," I announced. "And just so you know, there are no fresh panties for you there, and you definitely won't get new keys." Tears streamed down her face. Reality hit her hard. "Why are you so sure?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I couldn't help but remember the last time she found joy in this place. It was probably in the main bathroom where he had the audacity to use my toilet bowl and lower the seat. I was not devoid of emotion as I walked down the stairs with one of her bags. We stood in a dim hallway, tension in the air. "And where should I go?" she cried, her voice breaking. "I don't have any money or cards. I can't afford a hotel, and without a car, I can't even get a taxi." With a strong push, I pushed her out and then rummaged in one of the drawers. Her purse was there, a stark reminder of her past life. "Your purse is here," I said, handing her the purse. "There are about 50 pounds hidden in it. There are no cards. I'll handle the cancellation tomorrow. And by the way, the rest of the contraceptives are here too. You might want to charge for what's under your skirt if you're so desperate." She hesitated, then reached for her purse, her fingers trembling. "My keys are here," she muttered, hope flashing in her eyes. "Yes, but these house keys won't help you get back into the house. They're useless right now." "And my car?" "She's at the airport. If you decide to pick her up today, think about how far you can stretch those 50 pounds. Just don't come back. You ruined our love, our marriage that lasted 37 years. You ruined everything, and now I'm going to ruin your life. Everyone will know about your betrayal. Goodbye, you vile traitor." This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.